Hi everyone, welcome to the SuperClashBros, a podcast where we take a deep dive into the horror stories of Reddit and discuss the things that truly go bump in the night. My name is Trey, and I will be your guide through the strange and unexplainable this evening. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Trey, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Connor and David. And tonight I will be reading the story. This comes from the subreddit BackwoodsCreepy, and is from user Outworlder39, and it is called Church in the Woods. This is kind of a long one, so bear with us. Longtime lurker on here, using a throwaway. I've recently found myself snowed in and bored, so I figured I'd finally share my own story. This really happened, and this is how it went down, no bullshit. This isn't fiction, and I'll warn you, it's long. I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and me and my childhood friend Joe were outside all the time that we could manage it. Joe lived on a farm that bordered a pretty big forest, and my parents would drop me off in the morning and we'd stay in the woods all weekend. We'd only come out for school. We loved pretending we were frontiersmen, we'd build shelters, traps, practice making fire with sticks, the whole 9 yards. When we got to be in high school, we got this notion to pull a Stand By Me. This was based on the movie of the same name that had just come out. The idea was that we'd walk the railroad tracks out in the country, but instead of looking for a dead body, we'd find cool bridges to fish from and camp a little ways off the tracks. Of course, we knew this was dangerous and we'd likely be trespassing, but we were kids. We had a lot of fun. We did find beautiful rivers, we discovered bridges no one went to, we fished, we hid from trains. At night we camped in the woods just near the tracks and made small hidden fires. Nothing bad ever happened. It was idyllic. In fact, it was so fun we did it multiple times. Never had a problem. After high school, me and Joe went our own ways. We both left home, but always stayed in touch and always tried to coordinate visits so we'd see each other occasionally. Well, one summer in the mid-90s, it worked out that we were both in town for about a week. We'd do stuff with the family in the day, and at night we'd either catch drinks at a bar or sit outside Joe's house around a fire and talk about the old days. One night, me and Joe got to talking about our Stand By Me trips. Well, nostalgia and beer are a hell of a mix. Soon we decided to take a day, walk the rails, camp one night, and walk home. The day came, we started out early morning. We had my wife drop us off in our old spot where we used to start, right outside our hometown. She thought this was absolutely crazy and made sure to mention it. When she pulled away, Joe suggested that instead of walking the usual route, we'd take the opposite direction, just to be adventurous. We knew the land well, we had a map, so I gave a what the hell, and off we set. The day went fine, it was fun and a little sad, but in a good way. We found a bridge and sat on the edge, smoked a joint, and moved on. We had no fishing gear, but we brought some canned food and other stuff. Before night started to set in, we picked a spot to camp. It was a thick forested area, trees on every side of the train tracks, so it felt like you were in a tunnel. We had brought small hammocks to sleep on, but before we set them up, we decided to do a little scouting of the perimeter. Now this is what we used to do in the old days too. We'd walk the area around a little bit to make sure some dude's house wasn't just over the hill, and we were actually camping in the yard. We walked maybe 100 feet or so into the woods and up a small incline. We figured if we didn't see anything from on top of this short hill, we'd be fine. But when we got to the top, we saw an old building down at the bottom, about 100 yards into the woods. It was barely visible. We pondered over what to do. We both assumed it was a sugar shack or something, because there didn't appear to be a clear road into it. From where we were, there didn't look to be anyone in it either. All was quiet. No movement could be seen, no lights. We decided to walk a little closer just to make sure. We came down the hill very slowly, and we neared the building. We saw it wasn't a sugar shack at all. It was an old church. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. It was a squat, sagging building whose wooden planks were almost black from years of moss and rot. A cross still stood on top of the place, also weathered black. None of the windows had glass, and there were no doors, just open doorways. We got close enough to see inside. There were rows of pews and a built-up section in front for a preacher to stand. We didn't go all the way in. We didn't want to. Beyond all that, there was no sign of anyone else, no footprints, no paths, no roads. It was an abandoned church. We left immediately and went back up the hill to our spot we'd had picked to camp. Having a hill between us and the church made us feel better, but we were still a little uneasy. We chalked it up to the natural creepiness seeing a church in the middle of the woods would elicit. Besides, at this point, it was dusk, and we just decided to rig up our hammocks and go to sleep, and move on at early morning. Night set in, and as we lay on our hammocks and shot the shit, we began to hear something in the direction of the church. Our conversation about it went a little like this. Do you hear that? What the fuck is that? It sounds like people singing? And it did sound just like singing. We both slid right out of our hammocks and hunkered down, straining to hear more. We listened for a minute or two and the singing continued, but it wasn't getting louder. Finally, we decided to creep back up the hill and see if we could spy where the sound was coming from. We could still move very quietly in the woods from the old days. It was second nature to us. The moon was barely out, but it provided enough light so you wouldn't walk right into a tree, but it was near pitch black. We didn't use flashlights as we crept slowly up the hill, and we didn't talk. When we got to the top, we saw light in the distance. It was coming from the church, and the singing was coming from inside. Joe and I put our heads close together and had a hushed conversation that boiled down to, can you believe this shit? The light looked to be candlelight from the way it flickered, and though we tried, we couldn't make out what was being sung. It sounded like church music, but in another language. We sat and watched for a while, trying to see who was in there, but we only saw occasional shadows. We had no intention of getting closer either. We had about a football field length between us, and we aimed to keep it that way. The singing continued for a bit, and then it stopped. After that, a booming male voice began to chant. I was already freaked out, but this voice thoroughly scared the shit out of me. It sounded like some Old Testament preacher you see in movies, but again, it was like he was speaking in a different language, because we couldn't understand a single word. Eventually, it got to where the single male voice would say something, and the bunch of voices would answer in song. This lasted for a while, and then they all broke into this long, sustained wail that just kept getting louder. It got so loud and so disturbing that I covered my ears. Then it stopped. At this point, I was just getting ready to say, let's get the fuck out of here, when Joe put a hand on my shoulder and hissed, "They're coming out." We were far enough away that we couldn't make them out really well, but what we could see was a line of figures walk out the open doorway, all holding hands in single file. We could see some of them had flashlights. They began to sing again, and the light from the flashlights began to move towards us and the hill. We booked it back down to our campsite, grabbed our shit, and ran to the tracks. Once there, we ran down the tracks in the direction we had come from. After a few minutes, we stopped and looked back. We saw lights coming down the hill. They were moving erratically like whoever was holding them was shaking them. We continued to run in spurts and walk as fast as we could. We eventually stopped seeing the lights and came to a road. By our map, we knew a small town was about 15 minutes down it, and we walked there. Got to a 24-hour gas station and called my wife to come get us. My wife and other friends all just thought it was kids messing around, but I heard those voices, and they sure as hell didn't sound like kids to me. Not sure who those people were, but it was definitely the creepiest thing that's happened to me out in the woods. That's the story. A really long one, but a really fucking creepy one.
Nope.
Oh, man.
The kind of people, like, even if they were, like, just legitimate churchgoers who would traipse themselves all the way out into the middle of a forest off the beaten path and light it by candlelight and chant things in a foreign language. Like,
I don't think that that's a normal thing. Like,
no.
And the fact that the state of the church was in such disrepair leads me to believe that, like, this was a cultist. You know, like, there couldn't have been any other thing.
You wouldn't put your church out in the middle of a forest unless you didn't want to be noticed.
Right.
It's not the kind of thing that the average Catholic/Christian church would really allow inside its doors. Granted, I'm not an everyday churchgoer, but I'm pretty sure that kind of thing is, yeah. I mean, if it's late in the day, you're singing hymns in a different language with no windows or doors, and it's rotted to the point where probably a small gust of wind would probably knock it over. And you're just in there, you know, singing your heart away.
And
no.
It seems like from the story, too, that if they grew up around that area and went out there fairly often, that like they probably would have noticed if it was happening back then. So maybe it's more of
Well,
like a
so
recent thing.
they clearly state in the story that they walked in the opposite direction that they usually go in. So like this is all new for them. They hadn't
They
been to
hadn't-
this spot before.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of feel like you would have heard that alone in the forest, like
I
you
mean,
hear
like
something from a distance.
you got to think if you're walking the opposite direction for miles, and like it took them like however long to get back to that road, and then another 15 minutes to get to the town. Like
Mhm.
you're not gonna hear anything if it's that isolated.
Yeah,
Honestly, I'd like to see some GPS coordinates, see if we can Google Earth this thing.
It
wonder-
almost it makes me wonder if about like secret societies and stuff, you know? Like, do you think it's like the local, board or whatever, and they're just out there like chanting away, like doing some ritual?
it could be. You'd think it would draw some attention if a group of it seems like a fairly large group of people just suddenly wandered off into the forest. But maybe it doesn't.
I mean, it could be the local chapter of the Illuminati too. So
I mean, like this is from BackwoodsCreepy. Like this is like the middle of the fucking woods, like isolated, no one around. Like, they could have all driven there separately. Who knows, like 20, 30 minutes, maybe longer, parked in a secluded place, and then
they
like walked
landed
to
in
the
their
church.
spaceship.
Yeah.
They land in their spaceship. They're dressed as humans, but they're gonna end up leaving to the sky.
I want to
Have
see like an update from this person because this post was 3 years ago, and almost all
Yeah.
the comments
I
stopped.
wonder if there's anything
Because
else by
honestly,
them.
this is also like this Backwoods Creepy is literally like some scenes from and I'm not gonna spoil it for any of our listeners, but Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin. There's definitely a small church in the middle of nowhere that they're caught, eyeballing, and then they end up, finding out that they use it on a regular basis.
This user only has one other post, but it's the same story. He just posted it in Let's Not Meet.
The OP says, did they ever try to find it again? Nope. We're both moved farther away, although we're still in contact. Neither of us go home very much anymore. Well, I'd be like,
Yeah, I wouldn't
I'd be
either.
like,
Like,
man,
damn.
we need a damn sequel.
He posts the approximate location, but
Yeah.
it's northwest Ohio between Fremont and Tiffin, wherever that may be.
Googling.
Have you guys done any exploration in your youth to like strange places, or had any strange occurrences?
No, I think the extent of my strange exploration was constantly climbing a really thick tree in my my grandma's backyard and using it as a fort. But no, there's no. You said Fremont and what?
Tiffin. But I don't think that I ever did because I grew up in the suburbs, so there was not a lot of places that you could really go,
Right.
you know. But I've always been a little curious about it. The place where we went to high school, Trey, like there's some country areas out past.
Oh, for sure.
We could have totally gone exploring back in the day.
Yeah, like, I also grew up in the suburbs, and like I did exploring, but most of it was just through like, undeveloped subdivisions,
Yeah.
where like either there's like a half-built house or like just the foundation of a house. I thought that was pretty cool back then. I mean, we did spend a little bit of time out in the woods, like we would like have parties and like go to bonfires out there every once in a while. But like we were never like exploring. So
Seeing this Tiffin. Oh, I just found it. So apparently Tiffin and Fremont are two say major cities, but two sizable cities.
A lot of people were saying they tried to find it on the maps, but it was like, it's a really big area.
Plus,
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
if there's like a canopy of trees and then it's underneath the trees, you'd never find it anyway. So.
I highly doubt anybody would ever find this church unless they talk to these two and like
Oh, wait, here
we're
we
told
go.
where it is.
I actually got a satellite view here. Yeah, I mean,
you're not gonna be able to find it. It's just not gonna happen.
I'm sitting there thinking I could find a building. It's like you have to zoom in to like the very bottom
What
of the zoom scale to find houses. Anyway,
what would you guys do in this situation? Like if you were out camping and whatnot, and you just started hearing this like eerie chanting and singing coming from this old decrepit church.
I would probably do the same thing they did. You know, try to find a safe distance
to watch from.
To watch, see if I can find some people that exit the church and maybe see what happens from that point. But I mean, considering the light went straight to the hill, it's like they knew they were there. And like when they looked back at one point, they said the lights were coming down the hill and like shaking frantically. So I'm thinking that frantic shaking was probably them running. But no, if I would definitely try to check it out. But the second I think that they're onto me, yeah, no, I'd be tucking tail and leaving.
Yeah.
You don't know. You could be next up on the altar, man.
I don't even think I would have stuck around. Like I would have looked and then immediately been like, "Let's fucking go!" Like I've seen this movie too many times. It's time to leave.
How far away you are, I think.
I mean, you know, if you were a football field away from them, like these guys were.
Are you at an elevation? Like,
well, yeah.
How high? Okay, so for me, it's like, what is the probability of them seeing me if I don't move? If it's incredibly low, I would probably stick around. Like, if it's nighttime, I'm up, like, in the, like up on a hill or something, and I'm, like, looking between some trees or bushes, just, like, through a little peephole, I would watch. But, like, if I'm out in the open, and, like...
Just like a dirt hill.
And, like... They could see where I'm going, even if I tried to run. Hell no. Hell no. Get the fuck out of there.
Alright, well, I think that's where we're going to end it for tonight, guys. If you have any stories you'd like to submit, you can do so via our email, which is scspookycast@gmail.com. We'll leave that down in the description below. We've got a merch store. Go buy some of our merch. We got some cool tie-dye stuff. They're a little expensive, but they're all hand-done. And they look amazing. So go copy some merch. Be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of our content. We do have another podcast where Kale and Connor talk about anime, manga, and video games. We also have some gaming videos that are pretty cool. And yeah, so go check those out. Share them with your friends and family. But we hope you have a safe and spooky night, and we will catch you guys on the next one.